Welcome in. This is Hype Factor, a Fantasy Critic podcast for all the Fantasy Critic enthusiasts out there who just can't get enough talking about Fantasy Critic. I am John, aka John32, and I am joined by my good friend Marcus. Marcus, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great, John. How are things with you? It's been a month. I think we're kind of into the dog days of we're starting to get into the dog days of Fantasy Critic, but still lots happening. So I'm excited to get into it with you this evening.
I am tired. Not only dog days of Fantasy Critic, but also work is dragging me down. But I am looking forward to tonight's episode. It's energizing me. It is bringing me up because this is episode 6 of Hype Factor, and we are thrilled, honored, delighted to feature our first guest to Hype Factor. The third chair, that guest is none other than Steve Fallon, the creator of Fantasy Critic. Steve, welcome in. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so appropriate. Welcome in. Like we are looking, Marcus and I have been talking about this for a while. We're so happy for you to join us, and it's so appropriate that you be our first guest because this show would not exist if it were not for you and the work that you and the team kind of put into making Fantasy Critic a reality. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm very excited.
All right. Without further ado, let's get into it because our topic this month is a full interview with Steve Fallon.
Topic of the month.
So, Steve, you've guested on other podcasts and you've spoken about the creation of Fantasy Critic already. I encourage everybody out there to kind of go and seek those out because they're great listens for all those Fantasy Critic fans. And so we wanted to steer this conversation in a little bit of a different direction, away from that. I think Marcus and I have been thinking about, what we want to talk to you about. And we have a couple different areas. So if I can just kick us off, tell us about how your fantasy season is going. I think this is something that everybody's interested in. Like, you're a Fantasy Critic player as well. You built this because you're using it as a platform to really engage with your friends in gaming. So how's your fantasy season going so far?
So I'll level with everybody. Part of the reason I invented Fantasy Critic is I wanted to invent a game that I thought I'd be good at. And I kind of squandered the first few years and made some poor decisions. And now the rest of the internet has caught up. And I'm no longer that good at Fantasy Critic anymore relative to the general Fantasy Critic community and my own friends. I used to win a lot of leagues, and I don't win a lot of leagues anymore. I think I'm in 6 this year.
Wow.
And I'm projected last in at least 2, I think. I have a lot riding on GTA 6 not coming out this year.
Not coming out. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So if it does, I'm pretty much smoked in like half my leagues. But if it doesn't, well, maybe I've got a shot. I mean, I got Blueprints in a league. I got Claire Obscure in a league. I know we'll talk about those later. It's not hopeless, but it might not be as good as you'd expect from the creator of Fantasy Critic.
6 leagues is quite the heavy lift. So how do you end up in 6 leagues? I'm kind of curious on that.
So let's see. What's my list here? There's the original league. And if we're being honest, I care about that one more than all the other 5 combined. That's the original league with the people that I used to live with. And that one's, it's our 7th year doing it.
Wow.
Started 2018, 8th year doing it. 2018 through 2025. I've won once, and it's a 6-person league. So middling at best. Unfortunately, so I don't know if people know about the recent feature, the all-time stats. In that league, I have the most points across all years. If you average all the years together, I'm in first, but yet I've only won once.
Interesting. Interesting.
So yeah, there's that league. There's a couple leagues that are with people from the Fantasy Critic Discord. The people that are there might have heard of the Super League and Full Counter. I'm in both of those. Super League is like the original conference, the conference feature where there's multiple leagues that all can be part of one unit. And then Full Counter is like an interesting rule set, kind of pushes the site to its limits where every single game gets counterpicked as well. I'm not doing great in any of those.
Yeah, well, the Super League is super active. I mean, I see them really, really engaged on the Discord. So, I mean, that is kind of a really competitive league. So I can only imagine.
And I'm in Division 3, and I'm not doing so hot. So
And to be fair, I'm also banking on GTA 6 not coming out this year. So you're not the only one here hoping for a delay on that one till to next year.
I think there's a lot of real world publishers also banking on it.
So I'm curious, Steve, is there anything this season in particular that has like surprised or disappointed you so far?
I definitely didn't see Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 coming. Now, I never played the first one, but a 20-point score jump, I don't know how many people really saw that coming. I think that's the surprise of the year so far. And the other one that it shouldn't have surprised me, but I just don't know how I missed it because I didn't get it. I didn't draft it in any leagues. Is Split Fiction.
Mm.
Like It Takes Two was so good. One of my favorite games I've played in a while. And for some reason, this game just wasn't on my radar. And even if it had been, I might have said, "Yeah, I don't." There are two games before that were fine. Like honestly, Brother's Tale of Two Sons is fine, and A Way Out I think is just not is less than fine. But It Takes Two is fantastic, and I'm playing it now with my wife, and they did it again, and
Mhm.
I don't know how I missed that one.
Well, that's an interesting one where it's like, one-offs versus a pattern. Like I'm kind of in the same boat where I did draft it because it was kind of like there, I think in the second round, near the end of the second round for me. So I was like, it was better than the other options. Um, but I didn't draft it high in any like other league. You know what I mean? It's like, did you believe that they were going to do it again? I think they've proven now that they have that formula. And if obviously if they're produced next game, I think people would obviously value it really highly for Fantasy Critic. But I was kind of in the same boat. I'm not looking at it like this is going to be a breakout until I see some sort of proof that they can do it over and over again. We talk a little bit about drafting. What is your strategy when you build a team? Like when the start of the year comes around, December's rolling in. What are you looking at when you're trying to draft your fantasy team?
So maybe this is part of my problem, but I don't have a decided strategy. I can give some of the thoughts that I have, but I certainly don't have like one process. So I always know I'm going to be in a lot of leagues. So I definitely hedge and I don't try to go all in on one thing across all of my leagues. Like GTA 6 not coming out is one of my bigger bets where I'm on that side of the coin, I think, in every league I'm in. I don't have it counterpicked in every league, but I don't have it in any league. I don't think so. I end up kind of guaranteed that I'm going to lose some of these leagues because I've really spread the picks around. What else do I do? I usually grab my non new gaming franchises at the draft because I find take this advice for with perhaps a grain of salt because it hasn't been working for me lately. But I think it's easier to get the new gaming franchises throughout the year because it's indie games that you can't really know they're going to come out until they're like 2 months away. When they've got that nebulous 2025 date in January, you don't you don't necessarily want to put your chips on that until it's the August date in July. Then you can go for that. And those games are disproportionately your new gaming franchises.
Yep.
I think like that's something that I do as well. Right? Like I'm very hesitant to unless there's like a really strong case to be made for that new gaming franchise. A lot of times you're banking on those IPs that have that track record, that history. So I think that's fair.
What about during the season? Is there anything in particular? Because I don't know, most leagues you might draft maybe half your roster, probably a little bit less for most drafts. So, what are you doing throughout the season? Is there anything in particular that you pay attention to when you're looking to add games?
Partially, I'll look at what won the bids like the previous week and see if there's something that I'm missing. But I do try to follow the big events. The Nintendo Directs, the State of Plays, the Microsoft shows, things like that. But I usually hear about indie games from Fantasy Critic itself, whether that's the bids from the previous week or the Discord. Is where I'm probably going to hear about the indie games.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in the same boat in a lot of cases where I'm relying on kind of the research that other people are doing in order to inform me. Like there's tons of games where people are chattering about like Marcus this year is a perfect example. He was really big on blueprints. I'm like I don't know what this game is. I've seen some pieces about it, but it was only because of his chatter that I ended up picking it up. So I think relying on that expertise that's out there is is a good strategy. What about preferred league rules? Like, is there something like I think you've talked about this on other podcasts about kind of the development of different types of fantasy critic formats. Is there something out there that you prefer? Like you mentioned the counterpick league, super league, and conferences, or new gaming franchises, and the need to fill certain kind of roster spots. Is there like something that you prefer over all others?
So maybe a boring or expected answer here, but my preferred league rules are the site's defaults. Um,
Oh, okay,
it's
yeah, that makes
the
sense.
site when you go to create a league, it asks you like there's four presets. There's beginner, standard, advanced, and one shot. One shot's the one where there's no draft, no pickups, no drops. It's just the draft, and then that's it. But then so all the other ones, it just changes the numbers and some of the tags that are allowed, some of the other settings. But generally speaking, like the default rules for standard, where there's six drafted games, six pickup games, one drafted counter pick, one pickup counter pick, and then the public bidding. That's part of the two biggest things. Are I like public bidding and I like the special game slots where we're enforcing this number of new gaming franchises, one expansion pack, and one remake. I really like that. And then unlimited will not release drops is usually how I go to.
Unlimited will not release. Okay, and what about limited will release drops? What's your take on that?
Somewhere between one and two. The
Yeah.
site recommends one, so I'll go with that.
I guess this is kind of I know that I would say both John and I have talked a little bit about how Fantasy Critic has changed maybe how we approach video games just in general in our playing lives. Have you noticed that being the case? Like for us, I could say that like we're definitely more aware of more games than we ever were prior to Fantasy Critic.
I'm definitely more aware. I can think of a few cases where I've played a game that I can't tell you for sure that I would have played it otherwise. The one that stands out is Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, because I had that in my league that year, and that game is like a 73 or something like that. But I was like, this game is 2 hours long. I gotta just play it, and it's fine. That game is a cute little game, so that one stands out. I probably would have played Astrobot anyway, but Astrobot's score last year, where it got into the 95, really was like, okay, I have to play this, I guess.
And for me, it's one of those things where I think even games that you mentioned, like Split Fiction and It Takes Two. I mean, obviously, It Takes Two won Game of the Year, so it would have had notoriety anyway. But I don't know in terms of like a co-op game, like that type of genre, if I would have, paid attention as much to something like that if it wasn't for Fantasy Critics. So I think I'm appreciative of the site for doing exactly that and kind of opening our eyes to, all sorts of different options out there. And I think, we wanted to ask some of those questions to really get a sense of kind of, how you play the game. But we also had some questions about, the development of the site, the ongoing evolution of Fantasy Critics. So one of the questions we had was the site has been up and running for a few years now, and it's obviously grown in size and scope. It seems like it's been quite a journey. Do you have a favorite memory or moment, something you're particularly proud of from the last few years and kind of what this site has become?
So I can think of a few moments. The ones that stand out and probably aren't surprising to people are seeing the popular platforms adopt Fantasy Critic, whether that's Easy Allies or Kind of Funny. Being on the Easy Allies podcast was super cool. I wasn't on the podcast; I guess I was on a special episode. Last year, I met a few people that use Fantasy Critic at PAX West. That was fun. The biggest thing I think, though, is just seeing the growth of the Discord, because the Fantasy Critic, the site, doesn't really have a community. Like, you can't really talk to other people on there. That's by design. I don't want to get in the business of like having to build moderation tools on Fantasy Critic, really. So I'm not trying to implement a community there, but happy to use Discord, which has excellent moderation tools. But having the Fantasy Critic Discord community really grow into something that has been great, because that wasn't always there. I think that started in either 2019 or 2020, but it wasn't for for a time, it was still mostly on Reddit, and it was never huge on Reddit. But the Discord these days is very active.
Yeah, no, it's definitely exploded in terms of, I think, its popularity and its scope. We hear it in multiple communities that we're a part of. Um, I also appreciate, even going back to the last question, um, what it's done is increased our gaming knowledge, not just our enjoyment of different types of genres, but even our gaming knowledge. Like there is regularly mainstream outlets talking or being surprised by things like a Blueprints or other indie titles that are just exploding. And it's I can count out like the number of times where they have no idea what it is, but from a fantasy critic perspective, we've been tracking it for for months, and then
Yeah.
it hits, and then they're like, "What is this game?" And we're like, "We can tell you what this game is," right? So it's really kind of sets a differentiator for us.
There was one last year that stood out to me, and I'm blanking on the name, but it's the Metroidvania video game Donkeys game, his published game.
Animal
Oh,
Well.
Animal Well,
Animal Well,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah. I think
hmm
that was on Fantasy Critic players' radars for a while.
yeah, and it kind of took the industry by storm. Yeah.
Yeah,
I actually want to go back to something that you just briefly mentioned. You met some Fantasy Critic players in the wild. You said at PAX
Mhm.
conference. How was that? And do you have other examples of kind of like encountering Fantasy Critic kind of in your your real life?
so PAX was awesome. I'm hoping to go again this year. I had been to PAX Unplugged, which is the board game convention in Philly before, but I had never been to a big video games convention, and that certainly counts as a big video games convention. And I'd never been to Seattle either, so it was just great all around. People that are familiar with intimately familiar with Fantasy Critic and the Discord might also know the name Todd Coward. He's helps a lot with keeping the site's game list accurate, and we met up at PAX West, so that was really great to meet him in person.
That's fantastic. I can't tell you, like, having had similar experiences with kind of whether it's podcast communities or other communities that you've met online, and then actually seeing those friendships turn into like in real life friendships. I know like the impact that can have. So yeah, I can only imagine having that opportunity to do it at a conference, no less.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you mentioned in previous podcasts about how in many leagues the data shows that it's usually kind of one or two people that within that league are really dominating the outcomes. I think it's been a bit of a trend I've noticed anecdotally as well. Do you think? I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this. I think we tried to flag this to you that we would be interested in this. Do you think the recent data trends show this changing, kind of with more parity over time? Is there anything you've kind of done to try to address it?
So the biggest thing I've done to try to address it is the public bidding system, which was always intended to benefit people that don't do as much active research and give them a chance to react to other people's research. And I've run some stats to try to figure out, what direction are things going? Are we getting more towards, domination by a few players, or away from it? And I'm not a statistician, and maybe I did something wrong, but the numbers seem to say that it's getting worse. That the people that are very good at Fantasy Critic are getting better at it, whereas the people that are not as good as Fantasy Critic, maybe they're not getting worse, but they're either not sticking around. They come in for a year, they lose, and then they don't come back, or they stick around and keep losing. But for example, if Fantasy Critic was a slot machine, if it was pure randomness, then if you were to take the top 10% of players on the site and say, how often do they win? It would be roughly around 10%. Like the best people would get a little lucky and be slightly over 10%. The top 10% of players win 41% of the time.
Oh wow.
I've got a bunch of stats like that, but generally speaking, that number is going up. The only year that's higher than that specific number, the worst was 2019, but I'm not even sure if my numbers are right going back that far. If there's some outlier, it's a bit, that year's a big outlier. That year says that it's 50% were won by the top 10%. I don't know if I can put faith in those numbers, but the other ones are all pretty consistent, growing from low 30s up to 41 now. So I am interested in ideas at how to try to balance it, but what it seems to me, and I've always thought this, is that it's just not as much of a luck-based game as, say, fantasy football. Because, for example, it is much easier to predict that GTA 6 is not going to come out this year than it is to predict that Aaron Rodgers is going to tear his Achilles in the first drive of the season.
Right.
Yeah. That's a fair point, and that's a main, I think, differentiator between this and fantasy sports. That's a great comparison. Hopefully, looking at these stats, Marcus and I are contributing in some small way, because I think part of the reason that we wanted to do Hype Factor was, one, because we really love Fantasy Critic, and we get a kick out of talking about this. And we're in different leagues, and in one league we actually compete somewhat head to head, and so we were talking about it anyway, and we enjoy it. The other kind of motivator is trying to be a bit of a resource, a bit of a place where, the people that are really hardcore about Fantasy Critic are probably going to listen because they just like, having those voices talk and chatter about what's going on in the world of Fantasy Critic. But there's another use, which is for those novice players where, there isn't really that resource. I know when I started out, I said this on the first episode, I went looking for like what I did with fantasy football, right? Where are the podcasts? Where are the online resources? And there's not that much outside of maybe the Discord and the website. So hopefully, in some small way, we're participating in reversing that trend slightly.
You may, by the end of this episode, convince me to drop a game and end up being right about it. So we'll get there when we get there.
Get there, exactly.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, like, I think one of the big things that I've noticed, over the years, I think I've been playing almost as long, maybe a year after or the year that Fantasy Critic launched. And it's a long season. We've talked about this a little bit before, John, right? And so, like, anything that we can do, and I like to think that we're helping to contribute to just keeping people's interest maybe going throughout the season a little bit, because I think like people get really excited about the drafts, and so like everybody's all in at draft time, and then you see like a third of by April, where we're at right now, that like they haven't made any transactions in a third of the league may not have made any transactions in the last 2 months, and it's like, oh man, I want people to get more active and participate a little bit more, because obviously, yeah, we really love this thing. So hopefully we're helping to contribute to that in some small way.
Yeah, and the one thing you kind of mentioned is like the drop off for some that tried it out, may not for them, might be for others. I have noticed anecdotally in the couple leagues that I'm in, the people that are sticking around are the ones that are really kind of committed and take it seriously. I thought the trend would have reversed, because this year in particular, I've seen strategies improve. I've seen the commitment improve from those that are still participating in the leagues that I'm in, and like it's been harder, more competitive, harder generally. A lot of coalescence around kind of like similar tactics and strategies. So surprised to hear this, but maybe it's just kind of the continued evolution and growth of the site, and people just finding their paths in their different areas. So we'll see if that trend continues. We'll have to have you back on at some point in the future to check in on some of these big pieces.
I guess we can kind of probably just more wrap up this kind of interview part of it by kind of talking a little bit about the future of Fantasy Critic. Where do you see things in a few years from now? Do you have any updates or kind of like things that you have kind of in the hopper? You don't necessarily have to go into too much detail, but I'd be curious to know where you see this thing in a few years from now.
The number one feature that I had really hoped I was going to get done for the end of 2024 that didn't happen is I want to do something like Spotify Wrapped. The all-time stats page that gives you the stats for all of your years was kind of the first step towards that, of showing like a summary page. But I want to do that. I want to give the winner something more, where it's like, this person won, this is why they won, this is their best pick, this is their worst pick, here's a good look at the losers team, and this is their game of shame, and have various fun stats like that. Also, since the beginning of 2024, I did already put in code to track everyone's points and projected points over time. So the site's remembering every day, how many points did you have this day? How many points were you projected for this day? So when I do finally actually implement the year in review page, I'll be able to show like a line chart, like Mario Party style. How many stars did you have over the turns? We can see how you did over the course of the year. So that'll be there when I get around to implementing it.
That's great. I mean, you're talking Mario Party. That's probably the better metaphor in my mind. I was thinking of like the Yahoo analytics that you get when you're doing fantasy football one-on-one. You kind of get that trend line over the course of the week and some of the lessons learned. That's an awesome idea. I hope that we get to see that. That's a great addition. Anything else you wanted to share with us, like as we wrap up this section? I mean, we're just so happy to have you here, and we wanted to give you a chance to kind of, if there's anything you wanted to tell to our listeners, because obviously, like this site is inspired, even the name is inspired from the Fantasy Critic website.
Yeah, so I guess there's two things I'll mention. This is a feature that I have just started thinking about, and I'm kind of unsure about it. So I'd be interested to hear what you two, Jon and Marcus, think. Some sort of betting market, and I use that word carefully because I don't mean real money and I don't mean cryptocurrency, but I am intrigued by sites like Polymarket and Kalshi. I don't actually gamble on them, but the idea of just what do you think is going to happen? Having a market for will GTA 6 come out this year? And people, something like Critics Royale exists where it's just you're betting against the whole site. Something like that, but taking out the real money component. I like the idea, but I don't know how I feel about those websites and online gambling generally. So I'm not sure that I want to push people in that direction, even though I think it would be interesting.
I mean, I think that's something to explore. I mean, it obviously, like any sort of online gambling, has kind of um, a certain stigma attached to it. I actually find it interesting to compare it in my mind to maybe like a daily fantasy sports, which, it's a different beast. It is a different beast, but, it might be worthwhile exploring. But I have notoriously, I'd like to hear what Marcus thinks because I'm kind of biased. I used to work in public sector job that dealt with like casinos and lotteries. So I have a pretty liberal take when it comes to that stuff. But Marcus, any
Well, I'm
thoughts from
kind of
you?
curious. Can we expand on this a little bit? So, would this be like a side game, like kind of like the Royale, or is this
Yeah,
integrated into the regular leagues?
it would be a side game because one of the things that I've thought now for a while is that the base game is complicated enough and there's not that much I want to add to it to add more complexity
Right.
because it's already when there's new people playing for the first time, I generally tell them just pick the games that you think will be good. Everything else is gravy, but there's a lot of gravy these days as far as all the different settings and permutations of ways you can run your leagues.
Absolutely. And that's why we went really hard on those kind of first couple episodes to really give like a baseline. I'm hopeful that those first couple episodes will serve new players, no matter what season we're talking about, in terms of just strategy, what you need to know, kind of really trying to bring some of those examples to life. But regardless of where it goes, I think those are like really fascinating, really interesting ideas. I think both Marcus and I would happy to like be guinea pigs when it comes to testing that stuff out
Definitely.
because I'm all for it. Anything new that kind of gets us engaging with the site and platforms and gaming in new and interesting ways. I think it's worth a shot. Steve, you said you had two things. Is there one other item you wanted to mention?
Yeah, this one is like maybe more for me than for anyone else. But so Fantasy Critic's an open source project, and I'm a professional programmer, and this is the one project that I have the most control over. I get whatever I decide to do with it. I just do it. I don't have to convince anyone that this is the right way to go for it. So I would like to try out some new technologies to improve the reliability of the site behind the scenes, and probably at some point update the interface. I've never been anyone's definition of a graphic designer or a UI UX designer. I think that the people that have been playing Fantasy Critic a long time have gotten used to it and maybe have learned to love my graphic design. But I do think it could be better, and maybe one day I'd like to update that. Maybe that'll come along with the mobile app, but no promises there.
Got it. That's another thing for us to look forward to because that sounds awesome. I think we're all in all of those potential endeavors, and we're happy to be, like I said, guinea pigs on some of this stuff. Whenever you need us, we'll be there. So thank you so much, Steve, for joining us for this interview, and you're joining for the rest of the episode. So we're going to be talking a lot about news. A lot of things happened this month, and so thank you for sticking around. So let's get into the news.
Let's get into the news.
News this month, there has been a lot of it. So I think we're going to start with the big one, if I may, and we're going to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, which we were alluding to in the last episode, came to fruition, and we saw a bunch of games that we want to run through today. So I'm going to run through this list, and we'll stop at each of the big ones at least to get our thoughts, and specifically not just our hype levels for the games themselves, but we like to always focus in on the fantasy critic element of these and what it means for the season ahead. So starting with Mario Kart World, I mean, what can I say about Mario Kart World? It is kind of the driver of the news these days. We are on the precipice of the Switch 2 pre-orders going live. Mario Kart World, at least in the leagues that I was in, was gone long time ago. If it wasn't already drafted at draft day, it was picked up soon after the first teaser for the Nintendo Switch 2. I don't know. Do any of you have it in your leagues? What are we thinking? Are we concerned? Level of concern that we don't have it?
I have it in at least one.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. You're a true
I think
believer.
I drafted it before the Switch 2 teaser in at least one league.
Nice. Okay. That's fantastic. Marcus, anything on this one?
I didn't pick it up. I see the thing with me. This game got drafted in basically, I think, in all four of my leagues, and drafted early. Like you're talking like first, second round sort of thing. So
Hmm.
I wasn't willing to do that for an unannounced game just yet. But obviously, it's going to pay off for the people that did it. They're happy to hear that it officially, even though it was basically officially kind of coming, now that it is officially coming, people are, I'm sure, are happy about that. It's coming out relatively soon. One question I had for you guys: is there any way that this game doesn't score well? Is there any way that we could see this not getting like a 90?
Honestly, I don't think so. I think this game has high 80s floor, and I'll put my bet down on this. I think this game has a 90 floor. I think this game is
Wow.
Mario Kart 8 plus Forza Horizon. This game has 95 potential.
That's I hope you are correct. The only thing, and I don't really want to bring down the mood because I'm very energized by our conversation tonight, but the only thing that I am starting to get a little bit worried about is, does the controversy around the price start to play into the narrative when people start to review the game? I still don't think so. I actually don't think so. I'm playing devil's advocate here, but I bring it up because it's been so pervasive. I still would rather have it on my team. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just throwing it out there for thoughts.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't think so. The people that are going to be reviewing and contributing to this score, I don't know that that's going to matter. They're getting the game for free probably to begin with. So I think the
Mm,
pricing questions, I think that tends to, especially for these bigger games, tends to kind of wash out a little bit. And I feel like, yeah, like even if there are a handful of reviews that maybe knock it a point or two down just because of the price, it'll get so many reviews that don't kind of factor that stuff in that it's not going to play a role. I don't see it.
I fully agree. I agree with the controversy over the precedent that Mario Kart World sets. I don't really think that there's a price controversy, or there should be a price controversy over Mario Kart World itself, depending on one factor, which is what is going to be the ratio of non-bundled SKUs to bundled SKUs, and is it going to be significantly easier to get the non-bundle? Because if you're getting the bundle, you're getting this game for $50. And I think that the attach rate is going to be through the roof.
that's fair. On that question, everything that I've been seeing, it's actually like way easier to get the bundle. It's like a
Really.
70-30 or an 80-20 GameStop tonight. We are on the, I will be staying up late to try and get a pre-order of the bundle. And everything I'm seeing is suggesting that the bundle will be easier, at least at launch, at least in this next little while. They have indicated that supply is limited, like it's not going to go past the fall, but for now, it's actually going to be, that's the piece that they're pushing. That's the product, the SKU that they're pushing harder than the detached or the individual consoles. So we will see. I don't know how much that's going to play into the overall score, but I am definitely hyped for it. To the chagrin and the dismay of all of the unannounced 3D Mario Kart platformer game, it was Mario Kart World that ended up coming out this year. And I know that that's had massive influence for those that were betting on kind of a 3D Mario versus Kart. And now we know the answer, at least at this point in time. Maybe just on that, do you think that that has now reduced the chance of a 3D Mario being released this year?
I would say it has reduced the chance, but I don't think that the window is closed either. I mean, we're still only in April. Mario Kart's coming out in June. We've got Donkey Kong, which you're going to talk about in a second, is the next month. Yeah, July. So,
Sure.
you could still put one out holiday season, I think, but not hearing about it here. I would, if I had it on my team, I would start to worry a little bit for sure. I wouldn't drop it right yet. But,
that was my next question: was would you drop it? And I wouldn't.
No.
Because let's see if you two are on the same page as me on this. A lot of people are speculating that Donkey Kong Bonanza is, which maybe we should just go right into this now. Donkey Kong Bonanza seems to indicate that it's the same team as Super Mario Odyssey. Let's grant for a second that it is. I feel like that guarantees that they've given a new team a chance at 3D Mario, because if they're not, if 3D Mario is just the next game for the Donkey Kong Bonanza team, what are we talking? 2029 for the Switch 2's premier Mario game? It's not going to happen. That game is coming no later than next year.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a, like, Bonanza coming out, releasing in July of this year, so that's fantastic. To your point, no one really knows for certain that it's the Odyssey team or some part of the Odyssey team. Some of the hands-on impressions at some of the Nintendo live events, people are suggesting, based on the gameplay and what they've experienced so far, that they do think it has that DNA of Odyssey. But that's not to say that they couldn't do more, right? I think you're right. There could be another team. It could be an offshoot. Odyssey came out in what, 2017?
Yeah.
So like there's been a lot of time between then and now. So lots of things could go and break different ways. So the big thing with Donkey Kong Bonanza is it has a release date. We have it coming out in July, and it looks great. It's breaking the waiver wire records. Is that accurate, Steve?
It's smashing the waiver wire record. We added a feature last year that shows you how many dollars was spent on a game in a given week. Donkey Kong Bonanza was the first game to ever break 100,000 bid dollars in 1 week. $115,000 were spent on Donkey Kong Bonanza. The next highest is Zelda Echoes of Wisdom from last year, which had 72,000.
Wow.
After that is Super Mario Bros. Wonder from the year before, 54,000. Nintendo is very well represented at the top of the top bids list, and I think that's a testament to two things. It's one, their general quality, for being honest, and their tendency to announce a game and it's coming out in 3 months.
Yep.
People have that confidence. It's got the Nintendo bump, and I think Bonanza is no different. I mean, I managed to pick it up. I think, what did I spend on this? I don't even remember. I think around the $40 mark was where I ended up, and I was successful in one, unsuccessful in another league. I don't know if anybody else here had a chance to pick it up.
I contributed to that 100,000. I think I spent 50 in one and close to 60 or 60-ish in a second league. I should have had those numbers in front of me, but yeah, like I spent a big amount. I didn't have much to fill up my roster. I was like, you know what? I've still got lots of budget. I think it's probably worth it to add a guaranteed, again, like mid 80s floor game that we know is coming out, that we know is going to be quality. So yeah, I grabbed it in two. I think I missed it in one. I didn't bid quite high enough in one, and the other one, it was gone. It was actually gone. So I'm in the 4 leagues. Yeah.
One of my leagues, it went for $100.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow. The full thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's a 13 or 14 team league. And that has always been the meta of that league, where all the biggest games are going to go for $100 because somebody is going to do it. When you have 14 teams, someone's going to say all of them.
Okay.
See if that strategy works for them. Yeah. But there is there's a little bit, there has been some that haven't liked what they've seen about this game. Like, it's not been unanimous, but I think the overwhelming response is still that it's quite different. It's a bit revolutionary. It uses the system really well. So I'm still very confident about Bonanza. The other big title that they showed again was Metroid Prime 4. And now we've talked a lot about Metroid Prime 4 already. The big news here is that there was no date. Everybody suspected from the Nintendo Switch 1 Direct, which was the week previous, that they were just holding it because it was going to reveal the release date of the Switch 2. That did not come to fruition. We've talked about it a bunch. Steve, any thoughts on Metroid Prime 4?
I mean, this is my this is my white whale. Like, this is the game I'm looking forward to the most. I've been a big Metroid fan for 20 years now, and I've been waiting for Metroid Prime 4 for half of that. So I'm surprised to not see a date, but I'm just so happy that there is a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. That was the thing. It was my biggest fear. My biggest fear was that it was going to be a Nintendo Switch 1 only game that released after the Switch 2 released. Luckily, it's a cross-gen game. It looks great on Switch 2. I think that this game, truthfully, especially the Switch 1 trailer, the one they showed the psychic abilities, I don't blame someone for saying that they don't get it, that trailer didn't look fantastic to them. I'm going to play this game no matter what, and I'm going to love it no matter what. I am choosing to believe that they're holding a lot back with this game. I think that we've seen only the very beginnings of it. I don't think this game is anywhere near as solid of a floor as Mario Kart or even Donkey Kong Bonanza, but I think that the ceiling with this game is very high.
Yeah, and for myself, I'm just curious about how the Switch 1, Switch 2 review piece goes. Is there any kind of, they were talking about at the live events for Nintendo, there was, I guess they were showing off the mouse controls for this game, which is a fantastic feature for a game like this, but they couldn't make it completely integrated with the new mouse controls because it is a Switch 1 game, right? So it doesn't take advantage of the new features completely in a complete way. So I don't think that'll affect the scores. I think it's just kind of giving people an option. And we'll see where it lands. Hopefully, we get a date for that soon, because both Marcus and I, and it sounds like you, Steve, have all been really high on that game for a while now. The next one up was Kirby Air Riders, which just had a later 2025, no date attached to it. It is directed by Sakurai. However, the original got a 61 on Metacritic. So, when I look at this, I do think that probably there's value here. I'm not excited for the game because I don't have any connection to the original. Like, there's no nostalgia for me. I was comfortable passing on this and focusing in other areas with regards to the direct. I don't know any general thoughts on the game or where it stands for you with regards to Fantasy Critic.
I'm happy to let this one go past. I think that the ceiling is lower and the floor is also lower. I could see this, easily falling in the 70s, and it could go higher than that, but I wouldn't be willing to take the risk. It's one of these things too right now. I think that like this may come up a little bit more in our discussion as we kind of proceed here, but like my roster is mostly full, so I'm really being picky and with what I'm willing to add to my team. I really want a big pop or something that I'm very certain about, and this is neither. So yeah, I'm happy to let this one go by. It may be fine, but not really worth it at this point for any of my rosters.
Would you be surprised? We mentioned that the original got a 61 on Metacritic. Do we think it's possible that it's around there again?
No,
I agree with that. In fact, I actually think that if Kirby Air Ride was just basic remaster, like Pikmin 1 style remaster on Switch, I don't think it would get a 61 now. I think that game has grown on people a bit, and if we're being honest, Nintendo games just don't get 61s.
Exactly.
Yeah. With Sakurai attached to the project too, like you saw everybody kind of had the same reaction when they were seeing it. They're like, "Is this Smash? Is this?"
He gets all the CG budget.
They had to start. Yeah, and I think that's going to give it the glow up. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being like a sneaky, like high scorer. I know lots of people bid on it. It's moved in a lot of different leagues. I was just willing to kind of pass and focus my attention on other areas that felt like safer bets. One thing I'll kind of quickly mention, but maybe we don't need to go a lot into, is just kind of some of the expansion packs. They did show off some DLC for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and essentially DLC, additional content for Mario Party Jamboree and Jamboree TV, both with dates. There are content updates. They're also paid DLC, which again is kind of coming with its own set of controversy. Those games both scored pretty well. I'm generally avoiding DLC, especially at this point in the year. I think those games will get reviews given that they kind of showed it off as part of the direct, but I'm not certain. I also don't know if I'm willing to pay to go kind of find out what those DLCs are all about. I don't know if anybody else is excited about these. I played through Kirby and the Forgotten Land and I kind of had my fill, so I'm kind of good to move on from there. But Steve, any thoughts on that?
Mario, I just checked. Mario Party's not even on the site, which means that nobody actually requested it.
Yeah,
Kirby
well, that
is,
tells you
which
what
is
you need to
it's
know.
odd to me that Kirby's on there and Super Mario Party's not. But if Kirby's listed as a director's cut, and Mario Party almost certainly would be as well. So
Hmm.
most leagues you get one max director's cut. So I'm letting these ones fly for me for sure. There's no guarantee that these are going to get dedicated reviews. They probably will, but you don't know, and you don't know if they're going to treat that review as just a review of the extra content. And especially in the case of Super Mario Party, that extra content may not review well. If we're being honest,
That's
the
fair.
iToy stuff, basically, if we're being honest, if that's what it is, I don't know.
I think that's a fair assessment. It comes with that additional risk. Yeah. Yeah, Kirby probably is a safer one of the two. Then there was the non-pack-in pack-in game of Welcome Tour. I think that is an avoid. Looked fun if it was free, but not to pay for. And I think that is one that will get the treatment of this should have been free. So I do think this is
100%.
one where the cost, yeah, okay, I'm
Yep.
not alone on
Yep.
this. Yeah. Even if it's cool, I think it's going to suffer from that. I mean, I don't know how much time if it's worth spending on this one.
I'm the kind of person that probably would enjoy this, so I'm not taking it in Fantasy Critic. It is on the site, which honestly I'm kind of surprised that it even is. But we did add it. Uh,
Well, there are
Almost no
the
one has
leagues
it.
that look for the lowest score, right? Like there
There
are the
are
leagues
leagues that
that,
do that.
yeah.
Um,
So
yeah, I don't know what to do with this one. If it was $1, I'd almost certainly get it. At $10, maybe, because I do kind of like this sort of thing.
I know it's seeing like there's going to be like secrets and little things in there that are
But it just
worth
feels,
trying out.
especially, this would have been the easiest thing possible for them to do as a gesture of good faith, of good PR, knowing that the price isn't going to go over great. They should. I don't know why they walked into this one. How much did this game really cost them to make?
Some weird business decisions for sure leading into this. Um, the other kind of interesting first party game that we saw was Drag X Drive or Drag Times Drive. I don't know what the title is. With the summer 2025, so we expect it soon. But this is definitely one that's not getting a good reception. I think this is one where we could see a Nintendo game score poorly. Now, having said that, I have not played it, but it didn't look good to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna say multi-pass for me. Yeah, I don't think that this is a good one. No, I would not be interested in this one.
If Welcome Tour is the 1-2 switch, then this is the Arms. So probably better. But yeah, I'm taking a pass on this one too.
I think Arms is going to be offended by that comment when this is all said and done. I listen. I actually like the concept of what they're trying to go to. I just don't know if it was executed well or if it's going to work with the kind of dual mouse mode. It's just there's some big kind of structural questions there. The other one I wanted to talk about, which is not first party, so kind of moving into a couple of announcements that were outside of the first party games, but connected Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. So this is one that looked great. It kind of builds off of Tears of the Kingdom and the narrative there. So it builds off that art style, looks amazing. Calamity, so Age of Calamity, the last kind of entry into this series, got a 79, which isn't horrible, and that was with some performance issues. So, I think this is if you need to fill a roster, it might not be the worst thing to move with, but it's not like necessarily one I'm jumping for. I'm excited to play it. I'll give it a shot. Why not?
I did enjoy Age of Calamity. I'm actually known amongst my friends as kind of the anti frame rate snob. I'm more than happy to play a game at 30 frames per second. It didn't bother me at all. The Paper Mario was downgraded to 30 frames per second. I joked, half joked, that I could even see it going lower. I'm fine with it. Go full pop up, make it 15 frames per second. It's fine by me. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is the only game I've ever played where I was like, wow, this is bad. This game's really not functioning. Like some of those special moves you can do, you get down into the PowerPoint levels.
Yeah, well, we share the anti-frame rate. Like, I'm okay. Like, I rarely see it, but yeah, in that case, it was pretty evident. You must be from the same, like, NES, like old school mentality where, like, the screen would just like slow down when there are too many characters on the screen. So you're just used to it. It's
Sure.
like back in the day that you
Or just,
just
my,
came.
my old, could barely play these games, laptops. And I just like, does it run? It's good enough.
It's working. That's all I need. Marcus, anything from you on this one?
Not really. I mean, to me, this is kind of a meh. Like, what's best case scenario here? We're talking low 80s, best case
Yeah.
scenario.
That's
So
Although
okay.
the
Yeah,
most
probably.
recent mainline Dynasty Warriors just did really well. I think that was another one that could have been mentioned as a surprise. Like, what did that get?
Yeah.
That was like high 80s.
no,
Or
I don't.
close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say 82, 83.
Is that it?
So
I thought it
yeah,
was higher than
but
that.
that's not bad. But it's like that. If that's the kind of the ceiling for Age of Imprisonment, eh.
You're okay. You're okay moving on.
Oh, what is? Okay, I'm wrong. Maybe when it first got a few reviews, it was higher, and it has since decayed a
Since
bit.
declined, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm okay moving from it. Like I said, I think yeah, you're right. The ceiling is not that high. You can kind of save your money for something else, or if you really need to if you're kind of at the stage where you're trying to fill up a roster, it might be a safer bet. It just depends on where you are in your season. The next one I wanted to mention was because it had a lot of chatter at the draft, and that is Deltarune chapters 1 through 4. So currently considered in early access. Chapters 1 and 2 had previously been released. It had 84, but I think this is an interesting one where people may not know, Steve, about all the work that goes in from the community to really have the discourse about how things are classified. If you go onto the Fantasy Critic Discord, there's great discussions, and especially when there's like eligibility debates and a real I think community of resolving questions of eligibility. I think Deltarune at the start of the year was a great example of that. I remember seeing the discourse, and so we kind of landed in a natural place of what this means because now we're seeing chapters 3 and 4 are going to be released. It was shown at the direct, and I think the early access tag is probably the most appropriate because it does kind of like people will decide if they're actually allowed to draft in their individual leagues a game that has kind of that early access tag where you kind of know what half of it is all about. Do you feel like looking back that was kind of the right call, and how are you feeling about this game release now?
I think it was still the best call, but I don't think that there is a good way to tag this game for Fantasy Critic terms, which sucks because I love Undertale. Undertale is one of my favorite games ever, and I played Chapter 1 of Deltarune, and then haven't yet played Chapter 2, but I'm going to play this 1 through 4. I think it has an excellent potential, especially since it seems like Toby Fox is really planning this to be. This is Deltarune. Everything after this is expansions to Deltarune. Like, consider this the game. Play this. Don't wait any longer.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. It's the best option of the bunch. So for those that have it out there, it might not be a bad if you're able to draft games that are in early access, it might not be a bad one to look at. The next one up, Bravely Default Remastered, with a June 5th, so same day as the release of the console. This is a remaster, obviously, but it's looking pretty good. The original got an 84, and I think a lot of people that are into these style of games are very hyped about this remaster. So this is actually one that I would encourage people to look at if they're trying to fill a roster spot. You're probably starting in the low 80s. You may have a slightly higher ceiling depending on what they've done with the game itself. I don't know if you had other thoughts on kind of where this game stands and kind of the echelon of things we saw at the direct.
I would kind of agree with you, John. I think that this game has a pretty solid floor. And if your league allows remasters, I think you could do worse than a Bravely Default remaster. When did the original, like, when did the one come out?
2014, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that
At
sounds
least in
right.
the
In the
West.
mid, yeah,
Yeah.
2014
So it's
or
not
26,
that
like in
old
the
of a
middle.
game.
Yeah.
So that's something
hmm
that we've mentioned in the past. It can sometimes be a concern with some of these remasters is like how much are they remastering? How dated
hmm
might some of the some of the gameplay be. But 2014, that's still fairly recent, 10 years, 10, 11 years now. So I agree with you, John. I guess is pretty solid floor with this one.
Are you a RPG fan, Steve?
It's not my top genre, but I like Mario RPGs, Paper Mario, Mario and Luigi games, and there's at least one that we'll talk about later that has now caught my attention.
Okay,
which I think
some
people might already know what I'm getting at there.
Well, let's move on then to what I think is an exciting announcement, which is through the sizzle reel of the Direct, Silksong got a date of 2025. Still just generic 2025, but it's there. It was there for those that were looking for it. I am very excited because I need this to come through in one of my leagues. I don't like being in this position, but I'll take what I can get.
So I have a question for you two on this one. Do you two put more faith in this 2025 date than you did on the Xbox tweeting, yes, it will come out within 12 years, within 12 months?
Yeah.
12 years is right. Yeah, no, that's the right number.
Do you put more faith in this number than the last one?
I guess, but only because it's a year past that last time that they did it. So like, I don't know. I guess I put a decent amount of faith when we first saw it in Xbox's showcase. I feel like I was quite vocal. I didn't want a part of the Hollow Knight, the Silksong game this year. I was out, but that's not to say that it won't come out. And if it does come out, it's probably going to score pretty good. But I don't know. I feel like they gave you a crumb, John. They gave you just a tiny little crumb. And
there was that cake image from way back when, right? So this was the crumb that they gave you.
Yeah.
Listen, I expect Nintendo to hold them to get that game out. It was part of the Direct Switch 2 launch. They're going to hold them to that Xbox couldn't do. So let's just get it out there. Let's get a date, and hopefully there's a 5 at the end of the date, because that's the other risk, is that we actually see like eventually a date that's not this year. So
I agree with that completely. To build on that, I'm reading between the lines a bit, but I suspect that what happened with the Xbox One is that person that tweeted it Team Cherry never told Microsoft, yes, it will be within a year. The person that tweeted it misinterpreted it, and then they went to Team Cherry and they said, can we not make a correction on this? Can we just hope for the best? And they said, sure, hope for the best. You don't need to issue the correction right now. And then, because clearly the game was nowhere close. Like, it's now been
not even close.
2 years since it missed that date.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this time, I have a conspiracy theory that Nintendo, in giving them that slot, said, we gave you a slot in 2019 to announce this game, and then you missed your last deadline. If you missed the date you give this time, we are never advertising your game again. You cannot. This is your last Direct that you will ever be in if you miss this date. That's what I would have said to them.
I gotta think that at this point they already know what the date is, and they're just holding it for whether it's their own Direct or Direct to their or a showcase at some point in Summer Games Fest where the date will be announced. Maybe a Team Cherry like have something special that they just talk to their players directly. That's my thinking, and they just didn't want to be overshadowed by the news of a Nintendo Switch 2. But they wanted it to like drum up the excitement and point to, to Marcus's point, give those fans a crumb. Let's hope. Anyway, I'm hoping, because I am fully invested in this year.
And at the same time, though, I know that one of you on a previous episode had said that you're starting to get a little worried that the meme has overshadowed the game itself. And this game Silksong has a potential to come out and be pretty good.
Yep.
86.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's at an 86 is going to feel weird at this point.
Yeah. That's a fair assessment. It's gonna, expectation setting is a real thing. It's like when you go and watch a movie and everybody's telling you it's the greatest thing ever, and then you get there and you're like, yeah, it was good, and it just doesn't live up to the hype. It can shake people's faith in it. Yeah, that's a fair assessment. We'll see where it all plays out. The year is still young. I mean, it feels like it feels like so much has happened, but it's only the end of April.
I should note an interesting stat that I pulled a while ago. Silksong is far and far away, like by a factor of 2+, the most drafted game on Fantasy Critic of all time. Most drafted or picked up, because it's been around since the beginning. It's
been
like
5 years.
far out ahead.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting stat, actually, because yeah, what other game is just kind of being, maybe a Kingdom Hearts or something that's just kind of there year over year being
I think
drafted?
that Tears of the Kingdom is number two because that was
Right.
unannounced sequel to Breath of the Wild for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair one. All right. Well, I love those little stats. Those are great. The last game of the direct that I wanted to talk about was the Duskbloods. So not a game for this year, but mark your calendars for next year. We're starting to build those 2026 lists. This FromSoft game, exclusive to Nintendo, in all but name a Bloodborne sequel, despite the type of game that it is, I think will bode well for people drafting in 2026 because it looked cool. It has that Nintendo seal of approval, and I'm excited for it. I don't know if there's any thoughts on that.
I think that this is going to really depend on the reception to Night Rain. How like
Oh, that's a good,
if Night Rain
yeah,
does not really deliver, then I don't think this will end up being a first rounder next year.
that's a good perspective because yeah, it is different than Elden Ring or Shadow of the Erd Tree. It is kind of a multiplayer game, and Night Rain will give us kind of a taste of how the audience and the reviewers kind of react to that different format. That's a really good take. Yeah, I still think it looks cool. I'll probably end up playing it if I can, but that's a good thing for people to keep in the back of their minds. Anything else for the greater good on the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct?
I think we got all the big stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited, both from Fantasy Critic perspective, but also as a gamer.
Oh, we never talked about
Awesome.
Pokemon Legends ZA.
I mean, that's fair. It did look better here. I mean, I think we've talked about it in past. We talked about it when the Pokemon Direct, and I've been skeptical of that game just based on what past performance and kind of what the past entries into the series have made. And so I know Marcus and I have both kind of avoided it. But this did make it look a lot better. So I think those that are holding that game likely already drafted, and if not in many, many leagues, you think this helps them significantly, just based on how it looked.
Yeah, I think that you're looking at a safe 80 floor for Legends ZA. Truthfully,
Yeah. I'm not sure I could have said that before seeing this direct, just
I
based on the history of what's been happening with Pokemon lately. So
I wouldn't have said it about Legends Arceus, and
yeah,
it totally did.
yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. So yeah, the Switch 2 kind of changing the landscape of Fantasy Critic season in 2025. It's kind of exciting, and it probably will do for the next year as well. So I think we'll be covering that closely. I know I will be anyway. It's a personal interest of mine. So we do have a little bit of other news to kind of run through. We'll go through it a little bit quicker because obviously Nintendo was taking up a lot of the oxygen this month. Triple I Initiative also had a showcase this month. I'm not going to go through everything because there's obviously a lot, but I'll flag a couple things that I think are worthwhile mentioning from a fantasy critic perspective. Moonlighter 2 did get a summer 2025 window, but I believe there was some controversy whether or not it was launching in early access. I think it landed that it's not going to be early access, so that's good news for those that have drafted it. The first game got an 82, and we talked about it on the last episode. It might be a decent pickup. I think right now it's sitting at 23% published and a 5% counterpick. And having a window is not bad, but that launching an early access debate kind of scares me off a little bit. I'll just kind of open it up in case there's any comments on this, or also I'm happy to move on also through the rest of the showcase.
Some more and more developers or publishers have been doing the surprise early access lately, which doesn't feel right from a fantasy critic's perspective. I don't know how much the people that care about it for a non fantasy critic perspective, but it's always like that's not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to change, I think, the strategy when we start talking about 2026, especially when we're talking about indies. We've done an indie episode, but this early access or surprise early access can kind of throw a wrench into people's plans for sure. The next game I kind of wanted to flag was shown was The Alters, coming out June 13th. So now we have a date for this game. It's a survival game from 11-Bit Studios. I believe it's the same dev as Frostpunk 1 and 2, and it's sitting at 27% published, 9% counterpicked. It looks very cool. I have no idea where this is going to land on the Fantasy Critic scales. I know that some in the Fantasy Critic circles have been excited for this game to actually come out. I probably think it's a safe thing to have on your roster, but I don't want to direct anybody that way. Marcus, any thoughts on this one? Have you seen this game?
Well, I'll admit my ignorance a little bit towards the altars. I had seen it being picked up in a few of my leagues, and I was like, hadn't heard of it. Maybe I missed I don't know, some sort of announcement that I had no idea. So it kind of just washed past me. And then when I saw it on the show doc, I decided to actually do some research. And you're right, Frostpunk 1 and 2, and also a game called This War of Mine, which all reviewed 85 or higher. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Now you that Leonardo DiCaprio meme, like you had my curiosity, or you had my interest. Now you have my curiosity, whatever it is. And so, like, yeah, I think that the altars is actually probably, we've got a date. It's coming out pretty soon. The dev's got a pretty solid track record. Maybe it doesn't hit that 85, but I think like the floor is much higher than I originally gave it credit for.
And new gaming franchise too, right?
Yep.
Oh, good call. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. The
Yep.
only thing I'd say is like it is different than some of these, at least from Frostpunk, right? It looks
Well, it's got a
different.
strategy
It
component to it. I watched the trailer,
Yeah.
so like there's because these Frostpunk games, again, these are, we don't play these some of these games that we're talking about that we're
I
quite high on.
tried. I'm not good at
Yeah.
it.
So I certainly haven't, but yeah, I think that, I don't know, there's checking a lot of boxes that I tend to look for at the types of games that I pick up. So outside of those big Nintendo titles that we spoke about a little while ago, this might be one of my ones that I would be targeting if I were looking to add something over the next little while.
Also shown was Rematch, which has a June 19th date from the Sifu devs, and Sifu scored an 81. But this is a soccer-based game,
Yeah.
which I don't know. Some people are really loving what they're seeing. Other people are not. Another one that's tough to land for me, it's an avoid, but I know it's getting some notoriety and being drafted. People are picking it up off the waiver wire. So, any thoughts on soccer-based games? And it looks like if, it looks like almost like a modern indoor soccer style game.
It kind of looks a little like a Rocket League, but not.
It's Rocket League, but soccer.
But soccer,
Yeah.
but actual soccer.
Deconstructed, but actual soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to judge it or how it would be received. Sometimes sports games it can be tough, but if it plays like Rocket League, it might. I don't know. The concept, I don't know if it'll land.
It's an interesting one. I could see it kind of going either way. I think it has a potential to do well. I like, again, that it's the devs have done a game that's scored solidly, certainly thought of quite highly, Sifu. So I'm not sure that I would be willing to put a bid on it, but I think, again, I feel like I say this an awful lot. It could do worse if it's something that you're looking to add in the next little while. So.
And Katana Zero DLC was shown. Looked really cool for those that are fans of the first game, but still no date. I think this is one that people have been waiting on for a while. So not too much to do right now.
A while. Katana Zero
Yeah.
came a long time ago. It's crazy that they're doing DLC now, but yeah.
Yeah,
We've
free
seen a couple
DLC.
of these. It always surprised me when it's like it truly is a DLC, not a standalone release. But Cuphead Delicious Last Course
Right.
was several years after Cuphead, and then I just checked. Katana Zero was 2019, so it's been 6
Yeah.
years.
Wow.
And they're going to put out
That's
DLC.
crazy.
I know people really like that game. I have friends that played it, really liked it. So certainly you could do worse. But what's the best argument that it's this year now that it was in this showcase? I guess.
That's basically it. And they said keep tuned.
I think maybe
stay tuned
one
for-
thing to point out about it, because the time and distance from the original release, this is a DLC that's probably pretty likely to get reviewed independently of the
Oh
media,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so that's
No, for
always
sure,
something
if it
that
comes out.
we kind of hedge a little bit, or a little bit leery about picking up DLCs, whether or not they'll get reviews or independent reviews from the game. This one will, or I'm fairly confident that this one will.
Next up, we had the Galaxy Showcase a little while ago. Maybe less to talk about here, but there are a couple that I just wanted to call out because I think they're pretty cool. One is Deliver at All Costs, Konami affiliated game Far Out Games is the developer, and the demo is out now. And this has a May 22nd date, so coming up soon. Only published in 4% of leagues, counterpicked in 1%. It's a weird game. You're driving around, crashing into things. It has this kind of like, it brings a smile to people's faces when they're seeing the game and the demo. But I don't think I can suggest picking it up. But I wouldn't be surprised if this one broke the 80s and kind of surprised a couple people. So it looked like a lot of fun. Did any of you see the trailer for this?
I watched it this morning. Yeah, it does. It's
Okay.
exactly as you described. So, although it also, in addition to kind of the mass crazy destruction, which is you're driving around in a vehicle, it's kind of an isometric perspective, but they have like these full cutscenes as well, like movie style
Oh yeah, that's
action
right.
cutscenes too. So, yeah, it looks fun. I'm not sure that I would be willing to risk it to add it to my team, but it would be a game that I'm keeping my eye on personally.
And the other game I wanted to flag from that showcase, which is one that has a lot of chatter, I think, in the Fantasy Critic Discord, is Demon School, which still no firm date, but it's showing as summer 2025. This is a game that's, I guess they describe it as a new style tactics RPG. Kind of has a retro look and feel, looks pretty cool. Currently sitting at 15% or just under 15% published, close to 8% counterpicked. So I don't know if the counterpick was just people not believing in the game or not thinking that the window would be this year, but definitely one that I think people should keep their eye on.
Yeah, this game has been like I don't know, it's been known in the indie community. I've been aware of it for a little while. I think its original release date window was late 2023, so it's been pushed back, and we've had a few. It was supposed to be 2024, and then early 2025, and now summer 20. So it's keeps getting bumped. I don't know if that's probably a good thing, I suppose, but yeah, it's one. I think that's probably why it has the higher counter pick rate, is because it probably was drafted in a certain amount of leagues, and people that aren't indie fans hadn't heard of it. That tends to be what oftentimes counter picks are. I don't know that game, so I'm going to counter pick it. So that would be my guess as to why the relatively high counter pick to pick ratio. But yeah, I'm interested in the
Very
game,
cool.
so I'll be keen to check it out, and hopefully it scores well.
And with that, I think we'll transition into some broader news. There's been a lot of it outside of the showcases. The one I want to start with was something that just got a shadow drop this week, which was a remake, or in this case, a remaster of Oblivion. Obviously, there's lots of people that have been picking up this game or even drafting this game based on the rumor mill that's been circulating for a while. Those rumors came true this week. And the game was shadow dropped, and it's doing, I think, I don't know if there's any scores out yet, but it looks very cool. It looks like it's performing and kind of living up to people's expectations of this remaster. Have either you tried the game, hearing anything? What are your thoughts on Oblivion?
I have not played it. I'm not super excited about it personally, but people seem to be. I never played it. Played it back in the day, and so I don't know. I think that this game will probably review decently. I don't think it's going to hit the highs that the original did, which if I think it was like a 94 on
Mm-hmm.
Xbox 360
Metacritic.
way back,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in 2006 ish. So
2006, yeah.
yeah, so I don't think it's going to quite get that, but it's probably going to be a decent score. I can't see it being below 80. So
Yeah, I think we're probably talking mid 80s here. I probably am not going to play this one, although I probably played maybe 3 hours of Oblivion 15 years ago on PC, and but I played a lot of Skyrim, so maybe I'll get to this one. But it's a big game. Like I only have enough time for like a few of these big games per year, so we'll see.
I'm still scratching my head over the shadow drop and the timing of it. We're going to talk about Clear Obscure in a minute, and like I don't really understand what the logic was or why Shadow dropped the game this huge. And we're probably gonna be waiting for review scores for a little while because I don't think they gave out early
doesn't
copies
seem
for
like it.
reviewers.
I
Yeah.
So
don't think so.
we'll just be
No.
waiting and then we'll report back next month on where this thing ended up landing. The next game we want to talk about, which again just got a big news of the day in a blog post of all things, Ghosts of Yote ended up getting an October 2nd release date. So there it is. A lot of people were predicting the fall. Very excited to play this game. I unfortunately do not have this in my Fantasy Critic leagues, but excited that we actually have a confirmed date for this one.
I thought this was going to miss the year. I thought that this was going
Oh,
to be the sorry, but it's delayed big Sony game of the year. And I guess that could still happen, but I would be surprised. Once it gets a specific date, games usually hit those. I never played the original, but I don't have this in any leagues because I did not have this on my board for actually coming out this year.
and we'll be curious to see if we're both wrong, Steve, and GTA does come out this year when it does land, and if it interferes with some of these kind of fall release dates we're starting to get. Similarly, the next item up on our list was Marathon, which got a bit of a trailer. It also got a release date of September 23rd, again in the fall. This game's already drafted in 13% of leagues and counterpicked, I think the number is 8.5%. So it's not strong. I don't know. Marcus and I were talking before the show started about our kind of general distrust of some of these multiplayer games because it's hard to judge where they're going to land. I'm not sold that I would trust this for fantasy critic purposes. It might be fun to play, but I'm not sure. Sony's track record with some of these multiplayer games has been not the best, so I don't know why we would
That counterpick
change
number is
course at
actually
this point.
surprisingly low to me. I think that this game has incredibly high variance. I think this
Hmm.
game has 64 potential and 87 potential. Like it's got that somewhere between Concord and Destiny.
That's a fair way of putting it because it is Bungie, right? Is it
Yeah,
Bungie that's working on it? Yeah.
and
So I
it
mean,
certainly looks like it has more character, more intrigue
mhm.
than Concord. So we'll give it that.
I
Um,
don't know. I liked Concord, so I'm not the right person to ask.
oh, fair enough. Okay.
But I take where I know, but I know what you mean about just generally how it's being received. I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I mean, John alluded to it. Like, I'm always a little bit hesitant when it comes to just these bigger multiplayer games because I think that there's just a lot more that could potentially go wrong. They can, oftentimes people complain that there's the content isn't there kind of on day one when the reviews drop. So the game could get knocked for that. There can be technical kind of like hiccups kind of right in that initial week or something like that when reviews are being done. And so like I don't know. I think that maybe the Bungie pedigree probably gives it a little bit more safety than just a different team that might be working on it, but it's not one that I'm jumping to add to my roster in any league. So I
Yeah,
guess yeah,
pass.
pass.
Pass is the right
I've
move.
gotten bit pretty bad by multiplayer games in
Yeah,
the past, whether it's Fallout 76 or Battlefield 2042,
yeah,
that I really needs to be careful with them.
yeah.
Hmm. See, funny enough, I only drafted Helldivers 2 and I did okay. I've been okay. So, and I got Firebreak this year, which I'm not, we'll see how that turns out. The other game, speaking of GTA, the other game that I wanted to talk about getting a release date was Mind's Eye. I think we flagged this as, I think, from one of the developers of GTA or past GTA games. Looks kind of cool, kind of has that GTA style in terms of gameplay, at least from what they've shown. June 10th is the release date. Again, very narrow in terms of leaks published and counterpicked, both around 7 8%. I don't know. We've talked about this in the past being a bit of a risky pick. I just kind of wanted to note that it now has a release date. So for those that are excited for it, they're kind of looking positive right now. The bigger title, I think, where they did show something recently. There's a recent trailer I think shown was Mugenics now has a 2025 window. Interesting. This is one that's published in 31% of leagues and counterpicked at 9% rate. So this is the same, I guess, group that has done Binding of Isaac and Super Meat Boy dev. Um, just the 2025 window, still people waiting. So it didn't give us kind of the confirmation of the firm date, but it is one that is like many people are excited for this game. On a fantasy critic level, I know that there's a lot of hype in many circles that this, could score very well. Any thoughts on Mugenics? I've kind of been avoiding it because of the lack of date and not a lot of confidence that it's going to come out, but maybe the 2025 window is changing people's minds on this one.
Yeah, I'm semi confident it will come out this year. I'm holding back placing a bid on it. I think there's just better options out there right now, especially because we don't know for sure. We don't have a solid date. It's just a 2025 window. But if it does come out this year, I think it probably has the potential to score pretty decently.
And the next one thing that happened this past month was that outlets got hands-on previews about Doom: The Dark Ages, which we know is coming out in May. I think most, from what I could tell, were positive. There were a couple, though, that were questioning some of the changes. So I don't think that'll necessarily affect the score too much, but I think those that have it drafted can expect kind of a very positive outcome here for Doom: The Dark Ages. Have either of you kind of seen any of the previews? Anything to add on that one?
I wouldn't be worried about this game at all. I think this game's gonna be excellent.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I'm not worried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to turn my attention slightly to the rumor mill, or what was the rumor mill. So maybe I'll start with a game that it kind of is on the fence here. Star Wars, there was rumors initially about a Star Wars tactics game. It was out there, it was circulating. Since that point, it's since been confirmed. And I think uh, Star Wars had their Star Wars Day where they're announcing a lot of new projects. And Star Wars Zero Company was kind of formally announced. You can kind of go and see some of the initial info. They have a website already dedicated to the game. So that's now confirmed. I don't think it's going to be 2025, but something to keep in mind maybe for next year. So I think that has a lot of potential as a tactics game, but themed as Star Wars. And interview Star Wars game fans.
At least Star Wars Respawn game fans. I think that they've Respawn's got enough track record now that when they make a game, you should take note.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Marcus, how about yourself?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I've said before on the show, like I dabble in Star Wars. A tactics game in the Star Wars universe sounds interesting. It sounds like it could be. It probably won't be for me, but it sounds like it could speak to a certain audience that likes that sort of thing, and that Star Wars crossover universe, which is obviously cool. Yeah, keep an eye on it for next year.
Big rumor that was circulating was potentially the release of a Titanfall 3 game for all those Titanfall fans. Rumored. It was later kind of countered by Jeff Grubb. So I'm okay to think that lie. Don't be drafting that. That's probably not this year if it even is something that's being worked on. So with that, I think it's time we move into our hype check for the month.
Hype check.
Okay, so looking back, we're going to do a bit of a rundown of some game scores. There's been a lot of games that have released this month with some big numbers attached to them. Starting off with Atomfall. This is a game that I think Marcus and I were both kind of suggesting people avoid. For good reason, it ended with a 75. I don't know if either of you have played it or have anything to add on that one. I think we were kind of all in the same camp of,
Well, to be honest,
one to avoid.
I this is a little higher than I was expecting, so it kind of even outperformed where I was. I thought this has a 72, 73 all over it, so 75,
right.
Even not too bad.
Another game, indie game, I believe, Koira, scored an 82. I think this was a bit of a surprise. I think, I had seen this floating out there, but didn't expect it to kind of get to that point. So a nice surprise for those that did pick it up.
This is
another.
this is a Don't Nod game, so yeah, another one to kind of add to their stable of pretty solidly reviewing games typically. So yeah, that's really why I wanted to bring this one up. I put this one on the dock because I think like Don't Nod's got a pretty decent track record, and they're continuing with Koira.
The next one up, which I'll pause on, is South of Midnight, coming in at a 77. Maybe I'll start with you guys. Did you have any specific thoughts on this? Is this one you were expecting to land at around a high 70? Steve, how about yourself? Was this one that you had drafted?
I'll be honest, this one was not really on my radar. I know I have one friend, one of my coworkers, I think, is playing it, and he likes it, but this one was never on my radar.
Yeah, I thought that this was like trending towards a low 80s score. So it came in a little lower than I was expecting. Based on the, I'm blanking on the name of the developers. These guys, Compulsion, yes. This is still a fair bump up, even at a 77 from what they've done in the past. So that's good to see that kind of like tracking upwards for them. But yeah, it came in a little less than I expected. I played the game. I know that John, you have as well. I enjoyed it quite a bit overall. I think the combat was a little repetitive, which is I think common criticism of the game.
Yeah.
But overall, it was a pretty good experience. So I would probably put it at a low 80 myself. Yeah.
And I think that's fair. Like sometimes unless you've gone through it, it's hard to make that comparison. I think I'm with you on that, Marcus. Like having gone through it and beat it, despite some of the holdbacks on the combat side of things, the game is fantastic. If you take the art, the music, the traversal, the story, the characters, I'm shocked that it kind of dipped to 77, truthfully. But, we're not reviewers, so what do we know? But for Fantasy Critic, it kind of, I'm kind of glad, I guess, to have avoided it through the draft, despite being excited to play it. And I think that kind of narrative held true. The next one, shocking some, the Talos Principle Reawakened, tagged as a partial remake, coming in at an 89 today. This is a sneaky pick that I've seen, especially in leagues that have that tag allowed or special slot. Multiple people have put that in there. It was a sneaky pick, and it's kind of paid off in a number of realms for myself. In one of mine, it definitely has boosted my chances of success. Anything to add on the Talos Principle? I think kind of more or less we may have expected this.
So it doesn't surprise me the score. It surprised me maybe that it got scored. I wasn't sure that it was going to get reviewed. So that maybe, but like the original Talos Principle was right around this range, high 80s for sure. From that perspective, the score doesn't surprise me. It's more just that it got the reviews, especially kind of in this busy period of time. Sometimes remakes and stuff kind of get lost in the shuffle during busy periods. So
especially if a game that is not that old. Like I played Talos Principle and I really liked it, but I haven't like kept up with the Talos Principle community, and I didn't play the second one. But how many people were really asking for this? Like
right.
Talos Principle 1 is a game that runs on modern hardware just fine.
It's always that risk with partial remakes or a director's cut where it may not get the review scores that you're hoping for, or even DLC for that matter. But if it pays off in a big way, and this is one where it kind of exemplifies that. Next one up, Blueprints. So this is one that Marcus and I have been hyping for a while. It lived up to expectations.
Finally, John. Finally, we got one right.
Finally.
Yeah.
It landed at an 89.
Yeah.
That's where it's sitting currently, breaking and kind of trend setting and creating new genres and all those good things. It's doing what people expected, at least in these circles, to do, and living up to the hype. I had it in at least one of my leagues. I don't know, Steve, if you had this in one of your leagues.
I bid on it in a bunch of leagues, and I got it in one or two, so I'm very happy with
Nice.
that. I plan on playing this game soon. It's either going to be this or Clair Obscure. So
it will consume your life. So be ready for that. It's surprising that it's a game that I'm playing. It's I can see why it's at an 89. Yeah. Marcus, anything else on this? This is one that I learned about from you. So
no, like I said, I'm kind of just happy to get one a little right. I was pretty high on this one. There seemed to be a lot of positive buzz around it, and the score reflects it. So
next up was Promise Mascot Agency, which is coming in at 82. I think this is another one where we kind of pegged it probably coming in at the low 80s, maybe with the potential to get up to a mid. Doing pretty decently, and game's apparently a lot of fun. So that's great. The next one, Lush Foil Photography Sim, landing at an 84. So last episode, we were actually very concerned about actually taking that shot at Lush Foil, given it looked great, but it was just one of those weird genres that it's like really hard to understand where it was going to land. So for those that did bid on it and kind of had it on the roster, good for you. At 84, it's doing very well. The one that surprised a lot of people, Bionic Bay. So this is a game that kind of surprised at least the leagues that I was in. It went unpublished and it landed at an 87. So that might just be like an oversight. I didn't have it on my league. Anybody else that was tracking this one, or is this kind of a surprise for everybody involved here?
So I remember seeing this at 6-1 Indie Showcase last year, I want to say. One of their recent showcases anyways, and thinking it looked pretty cool. But I'm pretty sure these guys are first-time devs. And, I figured it was probably a mid to high 70s game. Pretty typical for this sort of kind of profile. Yeah. And so, seeing because it was sitting, I think, around a 90 for a little while, and then it dropped down a few points. So, it kind of shocked me. I was not expecting high 80s for this game.
Steve, anything in your circles for this one?
No, I was similarly surprised because this is a game that's only 5% published. But no, this one was definitely not on my radar.
Yeah, good for those 5% leagues that they had it. I'm going to run through the next three a little quickly because they kind of all blur in, and they're good for those that have them on their league, but I don't know if there's much to add here. The Lunar Remastered Collection ended up at an 80, which was kind of a decent pickup for those that kind of got it maybe late in the draft or have been looking forward to that one. Maybe a little bit more surprising is Fatal Fury City of the Wolves ended up at an 81, maybe slightly higher than I would have pegged it. I thought this might have landed within the 70s. And then Mandragora Whispers of the Witch Tree kind of falling from where it started, which was I think in the middle or high 80s, all the way down to a 77. So this is what I had been looking at early in the year because it had such a cool, different look to it, and was getting a little bit of positive buzz. Kind of glad I stayed away from it now, looking at how far it's kind of dropped down the chain. Next up, the 100-line Last Defense Academy. This game, again, surprising many, scoring an 87. Shouldn't, maybe because it's the same devs as the Stag and Rampa, but everything I'm seeing around this game is people expected it to kind of land in the 70s and are now being surprised, at least those that didn't publish it, that it's kind of landed so high in the league, surprising many. Was this on your radar at all?
It wasn't on my radar at all, and I didn't know that. I didn't know this game. I think that this game just missed me, unfortunately. And I think that had I known it and knowing that it came from the Danganronpa devs, I would have been like, this is probably a decent option. I may not have expected these high 80. I think it's been bouncing between 88, 80, 87 the last day or two. But I may not have expected quite that high, but I probably would have thought it had a fairly safe floor. In the low 80s or something like that. But I completely, I feel like I failed the audience on this one because I feel like it probably was actually like a pretty solid option kind of for this late April time period. We didn't talk. I don't think we've talked about it at all on the podcast before.
No,
right? Yeah,
no, it wasn't on my radar.
Yeah,
no. And the last one, maybe also, was it a surprise? We'll see. Clair Obscure Expedition 33 landing at a 91 on OpenCritic, kind of where all the hype has kind of paid off. It's kind of one of the highest rated games of the year. It's sitting at 91 right now as we speak. I think we all had high expectations for this game. I don't know if they were this high. This is
definitely
kind
not.
of off the charts. And we talked about Oblivion kind of coming out really like the same time frame. I hope this game does not get overlooked because of that. That's kind of been the narrative. So I didn't have it on my leagues, unfortunately. I was one of those games I was targeting. It just didn't drop to me in terms of drafting order. Anybody have a chance to play this, pick it up? How is it affecting your Fantasy Critic leagues?
I have it in my primary league, my original league, and I'm very happy about it because I needed a win after losing the Blueprints bid in that league. Mm-hmm. But I drafted this after doing some light research, just kind of like, okay, what's coming up? What's like next on the hype factor? Like it mid draft, like what are my options? Looked at this one and said, oh, this looks super cool. I should take this. And I would not have guessed 91 right then and there, but it's simultaneous. I think what it's hitting for people is it's simultaneously nostalgic and really fresh.
That's a good take. I can't wait to play it. So I think, yeah, exactly. I think it's gonna hit those tones. What about you, Marcus? Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this has what have been one of my most excited for games of the year. I only managed to get it in one of my 4 leagues. I wasn't quite willing to draft it at the kind of the level that it would have needed to be drafted at. People, right. I think, were fairly excited about this game. The one, so it was kind of going, I think, like late first round sometimes, early second round.
Yeah.
And the league that I did pick it up in is my 16-team league, and I had the last pick of the draft. So I think I picked it with one of my, it snakes around. So one of the, either my first round pick or my second round pick, one of the two. Anyways, I got it. I was definitely not expecting 90s. I was thinking maybe an 84, I think. I don't know. We can check the tape, see what I said last last episode, but I definitely wasn't predicting 91. So
yeah, 91. Well, congrats to all those that had it. And I guess what we want to move to now is kind of taking a look at what's coming up. Where is there some value? Like what are people talking about? Where's the buzz right now? Maybe I'll start off quickly and just run through a bit of a list. There's lots of games to avoid in the next month. I was going through the list of what's coming out, and some games that are kind of getting drafted and a little bit of buzz. Things like Despelote, which was featured on some of the indie showcases, Metal Eden, Midnight Walk. These are games that I think are have a little bit of buzz, but personally, I probably would avoid because I think the risk is just probably too great. You know, you could end up being surprised. I wouldn't be surprised myself if some of them crack 80s, but I just think your risk reward is a little bit off.
I did want to ask about Midnight Walk specifically because I have that in at least one league, and I've heard you talk about before how you were nervous about that one, which is getting me nervous that this is this year's Harold Halibut, because I thought Harold Halibut looked super cool last year, and a game looking super cool does not mean it's going to review well.
And maybe that's all it is that we got burned on Harold Halibut and we're both like super bitter. But like there's some things about that game that it looks super cool. But until I think we know more, it's just really, is it worth the risk? I don't know. I mean,
I
it's
haven't
being
seen
drafted
enough.
by, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen enough about what is good about the gameplay. I think it looks good, but I think the look is not enough to get a good review score today. I think there's lots of games that have some really unique, kind of interesting art styles that look really cool, but I don't know. I don't think that the gameplay is that. I don't think you're going to get, you're not going to lose points, but you're probably, I don't know. I see this right in the mid to high 70s. I don't really see much of a ceiling beyond that, to be honest. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah. Well, we've been wrong before, so like don't make us play the disclaimer. There's
yeah.
I might be. This is the one I was alluding to earlier about. I might be convinced to drop a game.
Yeah.
This so far, the one that we've talked about that sounds to me like it would be my waiver wire pickup is the Altars with its relatively soon date. I might be thinking about doing a drop of Midnight Walk and trying to grab the Altars instead.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, is like what else is out there? What else do you have opportunity for? What else is coming out the rest of the year, right? If you need to fill out spots, sometimes you need games that you just are confident are going to get a decent score. But I think to Marcus's point, the ceiling really isn't there, and you might have a better opportunity. It's not to say that it's going to work out where you're going to, the Altars is going to get you more points necessarily. Like you never know what's going to happen. But I just think like in terms of evaluating the two, I think you just have more opportunity and maybe a higher floor with something that has that kind of proven dev track record versus something that we don't know that much about that just kind of looks cool and is getting a little bit of buzz. We've seen that before with like, what was the game last year? The 2D, 3D transfer game.
Plucky Squire.
Plucky Squire,
yeah.
thank you.
I also was super excited for that one.
Yeah. Things that just have this really cool hook and then it doesn't kind of live up to it. So, yeah. I mean, to each their own. Be careful.
I mean, I'll put my money where my mouth is. That's a transaction I would make. I would swap out the Altars for, or Midnight Walk for the Altars. I think that it's just a safer pick.
Sure.
Yeah. Steve will hold you to that, Marcus,
yep.
in a month's time. The other games, kind of like another one in a similar camp, like Fantasy Life I is getting, The Girl Who Steals Time is getting a lot of buzz. It has a date now of May 21st. The original kind of got a 73 on Metacritic. This is a game that I think has some, discourse, but I would stay away from it. It's being counterpicked in like 27% of the leagues it's in. I just avoid at all costs. One game that we talked about last episode that is coming up soon is To a T. This is the T-Pose game that looks cool again. Has a May 28th release date. Drafted in 7% of leagues, counterpicked by 3%. I don't know. I'd still probably just avoid despite the soon-to-be release date.
Yeah, the Annapurna game, right? So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Flesh Roll came in at 84. We know that this one's probably going to be
that's right.
70. So.
Yeah.
But I think a more interesting conversation is looking at kind of where some of the movement's been. Like obviously last week or a couple of weeks back, we saw that Bonanza had this massive waiver wire impact. Let's look at maybe some of the top Fantasy Critic bids of the week of April 19th. We've already touched on Oblivion and the Oblivion Remastered. It was obviously picked up in anticipation of the big release date. A significant number of bids, a decent amount of money, nothing near the Nintendo games we were talking about earlier, but it's probably gone. It's obviously releasing today. It's getting its scores, so not as relevant. Marathon, I think, is an interesting one that it has so much traction based on the trailer. I wouldn't have thought that people would have gone for this, but I don't know if this is just, the uninitiated to like the hardcore fantasy critic and just like the hype around a Sony release, or what's driving this number?
I agree. Well, that's what I think it is. Yeah, I definitely think that it's a big title. It's a big multiplayer title. It's Bungie. People are excited about something new from Bungie. So I think that that's probably what's driving this as much as anything else.
It's also all of the risk of a new gaming franchise without actually counting as a new gaming franchise.
That's right.
That's right. Um, no, we got rematch here at number 3. I'm surprised that it's so high, given what we talked about earlier with the soccer game, and maybe it's just people are really driving with it. Maybe it's just me that I'm just. Hopefully, I'll be wrong, but it's just kind of high for what it is. And the other one up next, which we already talked about, was Kirby Air Riders, sitting at number 4, week of April 19th. So 94 bids, over $1,000 spent on Kirby Air Riders. So people obviously having kind of seen all the big transactions on some of the larger titles, now looking at what else of value can be found coming out of that Nintendo 2 Direct. I didn't bid on it. I don't have it on my teams, but I'm not sure I'd recommend it either, just based on what we talked about earlier. Donkey Kong Bonanza sitting at number 5. I think that's not a surprise because it's obviously the trailers that weren't paying attention after the direct that realized, oh, this is probably a critical piece to pick up. And number 6. Now, this is the one that I wanted to flag because it's not one that I'm familiar with. Chronos: The New Dawn, with 61 bids. And to me, this signals that there's something happening out there, whether it was a preview or some new trailers or discourse of this game, either getting a date or potentially getting some buzz around it. Marcus, are you familiar at all with Chronos: The New
I
Dawn?
am familiar with the game. I didn't catch why it may have been kind of entered the zeitgeist and why people were started bidding on it. Maybe there must have been some news about that. So I missed that. But this is the new game from Bloober Team. So they had just recently done Silent Hill 2 remake. And so I think there's probably a little bit of spillover excitement from how well that game did into this new title. So that's probably where that's
And
coming
that was by far their best reviewed game to date.
by far. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so maybe that's driving some of this. Sitting at number 7 is a game we talked about last month, and I actually like this a lot. Surprisingly, it's only number 7. Is Monster Train 2.
That's probably
With
just because it's
57
already
bids.
been taken in a lot of leagues.
Probably, I think that's driving some of it. It's dropped down, and people are just are catching up, or maybe our podcast is really driving the numbers a little bit in terms of pickups. But I was surprised that it was on here still. Number 8 was Despelote, which I mentioned, which is kind of this cool-looking art style, soccer style game set in South America, I believe. Got a little buzz at a couple of indie showcases. I just don't know if there's enough there to carry it. I could be wrong. I could end up being very wrong. But with 48 bids, it's still kind of kicking around. And then at number 9, The Altars. So, Steve, this is where we expect you to increase the numbers a little bit this upcoming week. I think this is one that we've talked about, might be a good recommendation for those that are looking to round out their rosters.
Yeah, real quick on Monster Train too, because I
Sure.
do have that in at least one league. This is a good example of the inverse relationship between how interested I am in a game and how it might score. Where Harold Halibut is on the complete opposite side. I have essentially no interest in Monster Train 2, but a friend of mine just compared it to essentially Oscar bait. Deck building roguelike is just so hot right now. So I would be spending money on Monster Train on genre alone.
That's fair. Yeah, we see that a lot with RPGs. I think that's actually one of the subjects I wanted to tackle in maybe future episodes, is also how genre can influence overall review scores, and some of them are a little bit more review proof than others. Absolutely. The last one on this list was Hyrule Warriors: Age of Imprisonment. I'm actually surprised to see this at number 10, just based on what we talked about. It got a lot of buzz coming out of the direct, and I think this is kind of like Kirby Air Riders' kind of spillover of kind of remaining hype from coming out of Nintendo's kind of announcements. So of that list, is there anything else that we missed? I mean, I think some of those are okay. I would avoid others. Not a ton. I think we're, to Marcus's earlier point, we're kind of in the dog days of the season. A lot of what Nintendo announced, I think, maybe shook things up, and people are now waiting for Summer Game Fest to see what else is coming.
I guess the only one that I will add is a game that we've mentioned maybe even as far as a couple episodes ago, but it is coming out in May, is Fuga Melodies of Steel 3. So if that happens to be available, I think that that's a decent option for folks because again, I'm going from memory, but I believe the first two games scored like an 84.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a safer pick that we had flagged earlier on in the season. Absolutely. And with that, I think it's time for Pixel Prognostications.
Pixel Prognostications.
Okay, so Steve, we're gonna have you participate this week. So we'll let you know how you did. Marcus and I are kind of doing this over the long haul of the season, but we'll let you know how you did in this. So as we always do, we'll kind of go in a circle here. I'll kick us off, and then we'll kind of for each one set a different threshold. So your favorite start, the Midnight Walk, coming out on May 8th. I guess I'll start us off. Based on what we talked about, I actually am not as low on this game. I think probably 77 is probably a safe pick for this. So that's where I'm going to land. Marcus, did you want to go next on the Midnight Walk?
Sure. I guess I'll I don't know, reinforce where I'm at with it. I think 75 for this game.
I'm all the way down to
Steve.
73 at this point.
we've
Really?
really soured you on
now
it.
you got to justify it. Yeah. Watch it be like an 84. We just pulled Steve off of that. Oh, well. Doom the Dark Age is coming out May 15th. This time around, we'll start with Marcus.
I'm going to go 85 for Doom the Dark Ages.
All right, Steve, you're up.
90.
Oh, wow. Okay. Maybe I'll split the middle. I'll go 87. I hope you're right about that. I think it has the potential to get there based on what we've seen.
People are excited.
It's releasing
too.
on all platforms. It's releasing on all platforms, right? This is not one that's just like locked on Xbox. So yeah, I think there's a possibility. Okay, Monster Train 2 releasing on May 21st. So Steve, you're first up on this one.
86.
Okay. For myself, I'm going to go 83. Just because early on in the year, we had all these kind of like coalescing around 80 scores. There was I'm really happy with the last month that things have just kind of been breaking through. But I still think that, maybe there'll be some. I'm being cautious because I do have this in one of my leagues. So you go ahead.
Well, I don't own it in any league. So I guess I'm less invested in it scoring quite as well. I do think it'll probably be good. And I might be a little low on it, but I'm going to say 80.
80. Okay. All right, next up, you mentioned it, Marcus. Fuga Melodies of Steel 3 coming out on May 28th. I'll kick us off. I mean, I'll say 84. I think the last ones were kind of in that range, and I think maybe it'll I've softened on my own hype levels for some of these titles. What about yourself,
I'm just
Marcus?
going to go one point off of that. I'm going to say 83.
83. Okay.
I'll
Steve,
say
are you
82.
familiar with this?
I'm doing the research as we go, but I'll go with 82.
82. It's a rhythm-based game, from what I can tell. I think. I don't even know.
No, it's isn't it like a
okay.
tactics or strategy
yeah,
RPG? Yeah.
What have I bid on? I have these games in my roster. I don't even know what they are. I just know the last games have done well. So, okay. All right. Second last up here. Coming out on May 30th, Lost Soul Aside. Marcus, you're first up here.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I am not super high on it. I feel like when we saw it, what was it, a PlayStation State of Play earlier this year, it looked pretty generic to me. I'm going to go 74.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Steve?
73.
73?
That's a pretty uninformed number, though.
No, mine's uninformed as well. I'm kind of just basing off that original look that we had of it as well. It was drafted a bunch, I believe. I'm going to say 76. Take the over there because I think it's going to, has a chance. And the big question mark. So, okay, Steve, you get the honor of going first on this one. May 30th, Elden Ring Night Rain. Where do you think that lands?
89.
89? I think that's a good pick. Am I next? Yes, I'm next. Okay. I'll say 86. Marcus?
I have 88 for Elden Ring Night Rain.
88?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys are probably closer, but I just don't know how this multiplayer, some of the weird requirements around you can't play with 2, you can only play with 1 or 3. Although if you can play with 1, that sounds fine to me, so we'll see. And the concept sounds really cool. Well, that was Pixel Prognostications. And I think that's going to do it for us. That was a long show, but That was Hype Factor episode 6. Steve, I want to thank you for joining us today. For Marcus and I, it's been kind of a pleasure getting to talk with you a little bit. We've been chatting back and forth. This podcast wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the work that you and the team kind of put into it. And it's kind of a passion project, and it's kind of become a side project for us in terms of talking about Fantasy Critics. So we thank you for that. Kind of before we get going, is there anything that you want to plug or let people know how they can kind of get in contact with you or the site?
So the best way to contact me is on the Fantasy Critic Discord. You can either just tag me in any of the channels, or message me directly on Discord. You'll find me in the sidebar, the top of the members list. My name on Discord is Elite Fusion. Other than that, I actually made a concerted effort to cut back on the ways to contact me. I still have an X/Twitter account, but I haven't posted anything to it in a while. I've turned off DMs there. I haven't yet made a Blue Sky. I can be sold on Blue Sky, but as of now, I'm not on Blue Sky. So if you don't want to contact me on Discord, just send me an email at steve.fallon@fantasycritic.games. I'll for sure respond to it.
Fantastic. I'd also suggest that for all those out there that are listening that have been playing for a number of years that really love Fantasy Critic, do go take a look at the Fantasy Critic Patreon. It obviously supports the cause, and there's some cool perks you get with being a member. Both Marcus and I recently joined the Patreon last year, so please, if you're able, go out and support Steve and the Fantasy Critic team. So Marcus, where can people find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky at Marcus O'Neill 79. And then I guess we've been plugging my other podcast, Tiny Game Chronicles. I get together with a friend every other week and we discuss a tiny game. So a game that's about 5 hours or less to complete. And we've had a good time doing that. So yeah, if that sounds interesting, feel free to check that out.
And for me, you can find me at John32 on Blue Sky, or we also have Hype Factor listed on Blue Sky as well, both on Blue Sky and X, where listeners can kind of send us comments, questions, which we'll incorporate into the episodes. And finally, if you've liked what you've heard so far from Marcus and I, and thank you to Steve for joining us, please think about giving us a positive 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. It's always much appreciated and helps us get the message out there to everyone. Steve, thank you again for joining us. Until next time, everyone, get hyped.